Hi, everybody. I am Madison Holmes.
And I am Macy Holmes.
And you're watching Holmes². That's right. That's right.
It's kind of fun that we have Morgan on because, like, he's usually, like, the first one every time I'm posting on Substack to like our posts. So I'm like, oh, yay, now you're actually on.
Yeah, that's exciting.
You read everyone.
I read it.
That's actually a good way to start this. This is the guy that reads everything. Morgan is a independent journalist and an activist, and we met him doing our own activism. And one thing that kind of stuck out, especially to Macy, while following some of his articles that came out like on Western Standard and such, which is a big known newspaper here, definitely in Alberta, was
and definitely for our viewers.
Yeah, and for our viewers, everybody's familiar with Western Standard. Morgan is somebody that reads everything, and he's been everywhere. So one thing that we thought would be a great introduction to this audience is because you hear me and Macy talk about, you know, getting rid of categories and blurring the boundaries between, you know, the left, right, because we don't really like categories. We all know it's the left hemisphere type doing its thing. But in the terms of the political realm and activism, there's no better expert on both sides than Morgan, because
Morgan's face like, oh, I don't know if I'm an expert.
No, he's totally an expert. He's been on both sides, literally the extreme of both sides. And so talking to him, and we've, you know, invited him to family outings and such now, he's just got this very practical understanding of where to be, funny enough, in the center, but in the center is not even on the political spectrum, because you kind of have to get rid of that entirely to actually be in the center. Yeah, in your own mind.
I feel like Morgan's a good embodiment of just the fact that, like, politics is such a process, because he's been over here, over there, in here, sometimes there again, sometimes here again. And it's like, it's a process of just where his journey has taken him. And so I think that that's where we kind of want to start with the first question is, like, you are an independent journalist, but you're also an activist, right? So it's like, what kind of led you into going down those domains? And I guess, where did it start for you, and where do you find yourself now?
I'm pretty symmetrical. Been asked to run by 7 political parties so far. I think probably maybe even more in the future. I don't know. I'm everywhere. I like to find the contradiction that is most in the society or the economy, and I generally try to blow it open. And this has brought me to the very I've been everywhere. I would say what remains constant is really who I am in my politics. It's really just people. Obviously, I don't like oligopoly. I would say we're not really in capitalism anymore. Either that is techno-feudalism or these oligopolies that are just taking over everything. That we call that globalism, imperialism. All these slang words have different meanings for different people all over the world. And so as the conditions have changed in Canada drastically over the last few years, we've seen the left kind of lose its absolute mind. They've gone absolutely batshit insane. The right wing is still about as useless as they've always been. So a lot of people are like, well, you've turned a new leaf, right? You're on the right, on the far right. Just because I can define what a nation is from a state does not make me far right. And actually, when we look at the trajectory of where Canada is heading, it is still heading off a cliff. And our conservative opposition to what we might call the completely failed left, they are not strong. You know, if the left wing could carry out 2 genocidal proxy wars, it ended civil society as we know it, it crashed the economy through a trade war, while lying and violating everyone's rights, you know, constantly. the opposition failed to win. They failed to get into government. They're opposition. They're not the government. So that shows we're in trouble. We need to work with anyone we can find to save our country.
Now, one thing that stood out to me when we actually talked in person last was because you originally started, people calling you far right now, you started on the extreme left, according to what that is identified as. And one thing that I remember also asking, because you saying in order to stop Canada from running off of a cliff, like the lemming that it has been, following the steps of all the imperialists. One thing that you said is that you didn't necessarily, your politics have remained the same. So it's not necessarily that you even left that side, more so the what defined the left has changed. And then so even the people you were around, you were like, I didn't necessarily change, they did. And so even the friend groups or the acquaintance groups that you had on the left, you literally aren't a part of any of them. And then that's not out of your purposely withdrawing. It was just seeing the map start to flesh out in a different manner. Is that right?
Throughout history, I believe there's always been ebbs and flows in every historical period. Through, the 1960s, with the rise of globalized neoliberal capital, or what we now know as globalism, the left, or the old left, died. So that left is the traditional left. It would have been the labor, the trade union, working class. It would have been critical, reasonable. You could have a conversation with these people. After that, it sort of became pandering and liberal. Of course, since Obama, or at least in the 2010s, it began to take on the characteristic of identity politics, or what I would call wokeism, which I would define as identity politics that have become totalitarian. When it's dishonest, or it goes way too far. This trend started to go completely mentally ill by 2014 or so. It's just, you would kind of dodge the crazy people when you'd go to work or you'd go to a protest or when you try to get anything. But by about 2020, I would say it was just dangerous. Actually. I would say it's actually completely not even safe to be around. And as a gay person, I've spent my life in the civil rights movement. I remember fighting for my rights. I have had friends who've died of AIDS who were involved in the ACT movement of the 1980s and the 1990s. And so all these issues are very close to me, human rights, and obviously I know how to define them. But when identity politics took over, I think we saw the function of the left become inverted, almost totalitarian, against people's fundamental rights. They're violating people's rights every day on multiple fronts.
Sorry, Maddie was looking for links.
But yeah, just you reminds me of, because you were just on an interview with Rebel News and talking about you bringing the identity politics thing. The
unbelievable.
People can see this is you, and you're holding the sign that says there are only two sexes, and you got a little cute flag. And the thing that I find funny with this again is it's the irony. We recently interviewed Blaine, who is a transsexual, but she's on the right, and I mean, by her own definition. And then you, again, being a person in the gay community, you advocating that there are only two sexes. So technically, you too don't fit within the gloves that, society has today made for you under the identity politics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I was curious, obviously, to have you on because it's like you were also showing Maddie can even screen share his Western Standard articles, right? but you've been writing about the problem that we're seeing when it comes to this sort of like far wokest cult, if you want to call it that. And
it's dangerous. Like this stuff, I'm laughing at it. Obviously, I think it's quite humorous. It's actually like anyone who violates your rights systematically on purpose and laughs about it, which is what the left is doing to all people. That's not forgivable. That's actually dangerous, and it's not even like it's really not all that funny. Like throughout every historical period when the issues shift hard, you do have to lose friends. You have to challenge people. As an activist, as a journalist, when I worked for the VP or when I was basically doing work for the Greens, the Democrats in the US, worked with socialist organizations and communist organizations. Every historical period shifts quite difficult. You have to really push people to keep up. You can't. You're like, okay, we can agree to disagree. Good luck. For 2020, this is different. This will never come back. This is completely different. This shift that we're seeing with this wokeism apocalypse, this is dangerous. These people are dangerous. I really think people need to start talking about it, because if you disagree with people who are identitarian and willing to carry out violence, violate your rights, carry out legal warfare on you, that's dangerous. These people are not capable of civil society anymore. And right now, the only thing we can do is to defend our rights as all people everywhere, and really try to get civil society back. I'm not sure if I'll ever see modern conceptions of rights in my own country ever again. That's how pessimistic I am.
What are in the article that we brought up here do you pose solutions? What makes this, because I mean, you gave a little bit of a timeline going back to like 2010, but I've read books like Critical or Cynical Theories, by James Lindsay, Helen Pluckrose, and they talk, and even in The Master and His Emissary, he wrote that in 2009, and he was talking about the rise of modernism, and even because postmodernism, which is also some of the presuppositions to this woke ideology and these identity politics, that started, you could almost argue in like the 60s and stuff like that, which is something Macy talked about too, because Macy's got this ongoing hypothesis that you said the transgender movement today, you are likening it to the hippie movement of the 60s. And it's not too fetched.
Oh, it's he's not wrong. It's like this one's much, much worse. It's like much worse.
Oh, this is
bad. Elaborate. Like because in the 60s, I mean, the drugs, rock and roll, they were experimenting on kids and youth. I mean, in my brain, I see them so connected because I don't really know if you get to be as violently woke today, like mothers literally taking off body parts of their own children. You don't get to that point unless you've had something screwed with your brain, which started in the 60s and earlier based off of MK Ultra and such. But what is the biggest concern for you today? And then you've also compared, we should be doing things like the UK you've alluded to in the article. What are your solutions to this terrible problem?
Oh, okay. Well, I could talk for about an hour on just that question. So I might break it down a little bit. Not many people understand what really is publicly knowable, which is everything that you've just mentioned, that there were horrendous covert actions called MK Ultra, programs that were run on citizens by their own government to confuse and assassinate and mind control and to basically meddle and to defeat working class people. even before that, in the 1920s, there was a massive eugenics movement before the Dirty 30s and the rise of fascism, also before the bankers' coup in the USA. And what they did was they used Monsanto and sprayed poor communities, people of color, and also poor families spraying for lice. Logic. And of course, the left fell for it. They were like, oh, we like healthcare. We want the kids sprayed for lice. And it was really to depopulate, to sterilize, and to poison people. And this is really something that goes back throughout the history of empire. Clandestine actions throughout every empire, the Roman Empire, the British Empire, the American Empire. Now Canada is pulled between the remnant of the British and the American Empire at this moment. Now, sounds quite shocking to regular people who don't know those circumstances. They're not educated about the history of the crimes of their own government, let alone abroad. For example, we live in Canada. We are not in America. The CIA was running those experiments on their own people. There are similar things taking place here. I don't want to blame or even, go down this conspiracy rabbit hole. Everything that is happening, we actually already know. It's just that the media won't talk about it. When it comes to the first article I wrote regarding Quebec in the Western Standard, it really wanted to punch hard to say that the entire industry is fake. It is completely not legible. The entire transgender or post-humanist industry is a eugenics direction. It should not exist. And the reports that came out led to an international credibility collapse last year in 2024, especially with the Cass report. The interim report was launched in 2022. The final report came out in 2024, and then the WPATH files leaked, massive leaks, and then were published by Mia Hughes from GenSpec. Mia is actually living in Canada at this moment, an incredible, researcher who's compiled every argument and point with unbelievable accuracy as to why this industry has hurt so many people and violated the rights of everyone. So these reports came out, and then of course, in May of 2025 in Canada, the Quebec government released the Quebec Sages report in French. That report is the first Canadian report that finally begins to refute the evidence-based level transgender healthcare, especially on minors. Essentially, it is not helping to sterilize and run children through eugenics. Of course, that means before the age of 18, they would be denied the ability to develop. That would be puberty, if they're taking puberty blockers or hormones. It could also mean surgeries. Dangerous sterilization practices really leave them mutilated with a completely non-functional reproductive system. In some cases, bottom surgery is illegal, but as Bill 26 has been disabled by a legal challenge, an injunction has been placed on Bill 26, Alberta, which means that theoretically a top surgery could take place with a typical medical runaround. And we do not have access to the medical records. Those are private patient records. We do know when parents sue the doctors, there's record in the legal system of a lawsuit. When parents get really angry that their kids have been sterilized without their permission, without any consultation with the family, really, and that the kid has gone along with the ideology and these mechanisms in the schools and these mechanisms in the health system with doctors to basically, whether it's top surgery or hormones or both, go through with it, we can see that it's happening. Actually, it was, I might just share with you, but I'll keep talking while I look. Is that there's a website in the USA. A lot of people do not believe really that it was really all that bad, or they kind of try to deny that anything was really happening, or that maybe it was just a few cases in the USA was, really pretty troubling. And I would actually argue that it was widespread in the cover-ups during the Biden administration, especially after 2021 and 2022, where things started to really ram through. It was like a full-blown emergency. It could not continue. This was unbelievable. And anyone who blew the whistle ended up usually facing DOJ charges or went to jail. So they had to go after the whistleblowers. So here's a statistic I found from 2019 to 2023, 62,682 sex change prescriptions were written to minors in the USA. So that is widespread. It is unbelievable. I'll just share that database to you. It's called database.com. And that really...
Morgan, repeat that one more time.
Stop
the harm? Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Database.com. And so the comparative with Canada is obviously that this is happening. It's absolutely happening. And some of the corruption is actually even worse because we do not have the same free speech mechanisms and the same transparency pressure to get it out into the public. We aren't able to actually get at that. Like I said, in Canada, I'm only aware of the circumstances in which the clinics pushed the legal boundary. The only reason we know about it is because the parents have sued the doctors. And those lawsuits were tossed out. Oh, that was a huge information dump. Obviously, the WPATH files is far more damning than the CAS report that was sanctioned in 2018 by the NHS in the UK and then released interim 2022 and then the full report in 2024. The CAS report was really, they wanted to work on it because they started noticing a 4,000% increase in children requesting sex changes in 2018. And the health minister at the time was appalled. It is not normal. It is not natural deviation from the mean. It is not, that these were just gay kids, that they just, we just didn't know that they were that. No, that is not normal. So something is happening. It requires serious study. So that's how that report came about that damned the whole industry. The WPATH file came out last year, and it was even worse. It was really just showing that the World Professional Association for Transgender Healthcare informs the United Nations, as well as the World Health Organization, develops the frameworks for treatment that is now dictated to countries all over the world that participate in these bodies of international governance. That's where it comes from. And when you look at the leaks that are coming from above the nation state level, they're unbelievable. And of course, as a peace leader, and I've led the peace movement, I've done foreign policy my whole life, I could not help but notice that the corporate super profits, they're all the same interests. The COVID era to the transgender and eugenics industry, it's big pharma. People ask me all the time, who is behind it? Who invented all of this completely insane, the idea to change the conception of modern rights, to redefine them to reference things that don't objectively exist. For example, people's emotions and feelings that don't objectively exist. That would define the definition of the kinds of persons in the eyes of the state. Well, once you open it up to things that don't exist, you've ended civil society. There's no longer modern conceptions of civil rights. It's actually very feudal. It takes on a feudal character that the whim of the powerful decide based on their feelings. Whether it's true, they could be lying about you. You could say, hey, Macy, like, I think you're being really racist towards me. I want to get you fired. It doesn't matter that I'm lying. And so it has affected every level of our civil society, this post-humanist, post-modern direction. So it really, it's unbelievable how connected and interconnected these problems are. And I think that it is in a good place now that the USA is rolling back. And that's a right-wing government. In the UK, all three countries, Ireland, Scotland, England, all left-wing governments. And yet the Supreme Court has still rolled back to a modern conception, the definition of the kinds of persons based on biological sex. And there's a huge misconception that must somehow hurt trans people. There's no such thing. They still have rights. They're human beings. They have modern rights. It's just that they're defined in a modern way. In Canada, people do not understand that they've changed the definition of the kinds of persons to no longer be a modern conception of. So if things were to ever, want to go one way or another, modern right, if we wanted to define it, trans people would have all the rights that they still have. That they would just be common sense. So really, there's so much work to be done in Canada through the massive pushback from the other countries, US and UK.
Yeah, like well, we were talking. So for everybody listening, we were talking to Morgan on the phone yesterday because we were trying to figure out how we were gonna, I guess, like figure out what we are gonna ask and talk about. And with the idea of the I guess transgender movement, and then just what we've been seeing with this woke apocalypse and the idea of people's rights and being violated, and what you're saying is it's not in a modern sense anymore that makes any sense, because now they keep changing the rules. It's like rules for thee but not for me, right? It's like people are just making shit up at this point. And so I mean, I guess my question is like, as you were saying in the beginning, right, it's like the left, and even just at this point, it's like, I almost feel like it's insulting, because it's like, I don't even want to say that all people on the left are like this, and I don't even want to say all people on the right are like everybody else on the right, right? It's like at this point, I just want to say the people that have really gravitated towards that end of the extreme, as you said, have lost their freaking minds, right? But then you also said that the right has been basically like ineffective at doing anything about it, right? And so that's like my question, because when we were on the phone yesterday and you brought up even the example of like pharma and COVID and all that, I was like a little bit like, you were painting the picture, which is like the right is not necessarily going far enough. And if we would just potentially do something where it's like Danielle Smith coming out with even the different bills, where it's like, okay, this would tip the left off the edge, right? And make them even more angry, and then it shows more. I'm like, my contention was at the time, well, it didn't work for COVID, so why would it work now, right? And so this kind of comes into the idea of like, okay, so we can play the game of like clandestine politics and like sabotaging one another, but the idea of trying to figure out, I think yesterday you were mentioning, I forgot exactly how you worded it, but it was like a social, like, I don't want to say contract, that seems fucked up, but like almost like a new way of coming at ourselves culturally and socially, and like actually trying to update that I think is still something that's worth exploring, because I know that for you, or at least you can obviously speak on behalf of this is correct, but it's like, because your story has taken you down so many alleys and domains, and you are actually quite acquainted with literally everyone on the spectrum, right? Morgan, because I am on the spectrum. No, but because you are, then my question is like, how do you ask yourself that question and try and figure out the solution of like groupthink and how to actually come at solving the problem through a guise of like, how do we not keep on doing this whole stupid divisive left and right and then trying to sabotage each other, and actually try and like reach our hands forward on a cultural basis so it makes us understand what the hell modern rights were supposed to actually be in the first place. And then Maddie, it looks like you have something to say to that.
No, it's a good question. I have the same question, because if definitions are being changed, that means we can't necessarily trust the system. And again, even unfortunately, Alberta was passing a bill to remove sexually explicit literature from children's schools, because parents found some pretty inappropriate literature in like
pornography.
Yeah, basically pornography in the schools of our children, our younger generations. And so enough parents brought it to the attention of one of the ministers, and then they were in the midst of pulling it off. But naturally, backlash occurred, and then they're pulling back. The Alberta government is going, oh, shoot, we're getting too much flack. And then they're starting to backtrack a little bit on the bill, which would be a step in the right direction. And it kind of sounds, Morgan, like you were like, this has happened on multiple occasions, which again is why you're calling the right useless. And as people, me and Macy are both, and no, it's totally fair. As me and Macy are politically involved in the UCP party, and politics, being politically active and activism is not easy, because you can grind, but policy is not everything. And I mean, you probably know that better than even I do, because you've been doing, like you said, foreign policy your whole life. So it's like the futileness of things like policy. And I think that's why Macy's question is so relevant, because it's more on the cultural aspect and breaking those stupid boundaries of which you've been in every single label known to man.
Yeah, like my last little tidbit to Maddie's remark is like, you can come at it from how we like to come at it, which is it's on the level of the individual. Because it's like, I'm like, I would rather just fucking get my shit in order and try and then simultaneously try and figure out how I get it in order with other people, right? But because you've been involved with so many groups, yeah. I haven't, like, not on the level that you have. Like, I know I'm only just getting introduced into the realm of the politics of politics, right? Yeah. But you have been trying to figure out, well, how do I experiment to see how you actually get people that are either really over here or really over there, or the people that are like, I honestly just kind of want to, not do their divisive thing. It's like, how do you, on a collective basis / individual basis, coming together, try and figure out how in the hell you solve this problem?
Yeah.
There's such a thing as history. Okay. And conditions change through historical processes. What was bad a decade ago is actually quite useful as the country collapses today. And vice versa. As a republic grows more dysfunctional, they rely more on law to regulate. And this was true with the Roman Empire as it collapsed, that the more nations that they absorbed into the empire, they needed to resort to law in order to keep it functional, the more dysfunctional it became. But actually, like, believe it or not, if you could imagine ancient Romans, like horrible imperialist stages of it, where they kind of became woke a little bit to accommodate incompatible and contradictory elements.
Yeah.
And it's very similar today to see the USA relying on law for everything, for things that don't exist. Even just, policy regarding how to use the bathroom literally is a norm. It should not be a law. It should never be a policy, but they're resorting to it because, the elites have no idea what to do. And they honestly don't understand the foundings of their own country. It was founded on a completely different direction and control and authoritarianism. So Canada is not a republic. We are a limited democracy. We don't have really the same mechanisms, or they're not even defined the same. But really, we're seeing the exact same tendency with the ruling elite, regardless the label. And you had mentioned that, and I don't want to speak too much on this topic, but I could move it into a few other different examples. But we just saw Nova Scotia ban nature, and it actually kind of looks like they banned mankind then from nature, and meanwhile they're spraying like Monsanto and pesticides and stuff that'll kill all the trees, claiming climate, global warming, and wildfires as the excuse to ban all of nature. Like, this is a conservative government. And a lot of people don't understand that conservatives are pretty woke. Like, this is not normal. It's not acceptable. So as people are sort of trying to take matters into their own hands, fleeing the crazy left, trying to understand where there can be a future for our basic rights or our basic way of life, I'm very pessimistic. It's over. We're literally no longer in the modern period. After about 2022, I'd say we are no longer in modernity at all. So we're in a dark age. The people who are in power, the level of knowledge loss, what I would describe as knowledge loss is just that we don't know who we are. We cannot define who we are as a nation anymore. We don't know anything about our Constitution, what our rights are. We can't define them. We don't know how to stand for them clearly. The abuse and the suffering and the breakdown is unbelievable. It's unprecedented, the decline of our country. So I would leave some of those examples with you just to show that, like, it's not the left. It's literally, it's a decline that might be faster on the left. It will encompass the entire society. It is the technological society that has dumbed us down and made us completely insane. So when it comes to identity politics, that became phenomena. Everyone tried to warn the civilization, don't do this. You're going to regret it. You're going to lose control of it. It might suit Obama for like 10 minutes. Wait till you see what comes next. Then we had BLM burning down police stations. Now we've got I'm pro support. I used to be more radical, but obviously now we have entire foreign-born populations that are warring in the streets, whether it's this civil war in Northern Africa, the Horn region, or it's Hindu supremacy versus Palestinian or Sikh nationalism in Canada. They're not Canadian. Of course, there's Zionists and Muslims warring in our streets. And so I've been in the peace movement my whole life, and I've never had to deal with importing the war that I'm trying to stop into our streets, saying, knock it off, please stop. We don't want anything to do with this. The conditions have changed. Identity politics have accelerated. And this isn't wokeism like it was in 2012. This is literally civilizational breakdown. It is unacceptable completely. So, at this stage, I think that we need to kind of look at it in a historical lens. That it started out very innocent, that we're going to we're just going to push a little extra hard and violate some people's rights in order to get the disadvantaged people on MSM news or something. Well, that didn't work. And not only did it not work, we're now seeing, widespread violence and systemic ending of civil society across all of the Western civilization.
You wrote 2 articles for the Canada Files. Now this is hilarious. This is the anti-imperialist journal, fighting the Canadian Empire. Which I never even heard that statement until this link, Canadian Empire. But
yeah.
Now this is kind of what you're talking about right now, is this like this infiltration, this identity politics, because again, we have Canadians in Ukraine, and a lot of people think that makes them heroes, but I mean, we've done episodes on Holmes², on Operation Gladio and such like that, so that's the literal aspect of the mercenaries. But what you're talking about, even the fact that we have Canadians wanting to go to Ukraine and in support. Now, like you said, death period is no bueno, but they're pro killing Russians. This isn't just about defending Ukraine or defending people from dying generally. It is this movement that we've taken into their country, and we have others movements within our own. So, which is really funny, this you kind of alluded to in the phone call conversation we had, this like fake nationalism. And it's funny because that's really most prevalent here in Canada, unless you have a different.
Definitely.
But this fake nationalism within Canada really has blurred any sort of. You have to have a little bit of like identity politics and identity or values, like they're 2 different things, and they've been completely just amalgamated.
Yeah, I mean, my adage to that before you can put your comments, Morgan, is the fact that it's like when it came to even the idea of, I guess, identity politics. Now, the transgender movement is like the best that you can use as an extreme example, but it happens when it comes to just any sort of ethnicity or any sort of religion. It's happening. And what happens is the idea of like, oh, well, they'll make this statement on like the gender side where it's just like, it has nothing like to do with gender, right? It's like it's not about, there is no like males and there is no females and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, but they attribute their entire identity to basically opposing that. They're like, my entire identity is based on the fact that I'm a transgender, right? It's never based on the fact that you have any other value other than I trans. Like literally, it's like the idea, the fine line between people who actually hold values towards other people, individuals, human beings, is kind of just gotten swiped away for their own, the sake of keeping their own little comfort blanket as they get to identify how they want to identify and fuck you to everybody else. So it's just,
well, yeah. You could have Canadians like to go over and fight for people like Ukrainians, and then having certain Zionists here that we don't even understand. One, you don't understand what's actually causing the war, who's funding it, but then why are you there as an individual? Why are the Ukrainian, some of the people even want you? Why does the Ukrainian government want you there? There's all of these knowing your own identity, especially because Canada has been so known for its peacekeeping missions. So it's like keeping that in mind, but that's like an identity. But what is that really? How does that translate? And it really needs to be kind of redefined. Like if we have this, is there even this Canadian identity that can be salvaged, or what's the solution?
Oh, well, I think analyze the psychology, which is it's an invention. We have the technique developed in the last century of psychological analysis of all different kinds. We could poke them and see what they do, in different situations. We could ask them how they're feeling. I think most people on the fake left, it's hard to call them fake left when they are adamant that they actually are the left and they're nuts. That's really hard for me because I came from the left. But the psychology here is unbelievable. It has shifted in a way that isn't just people disagreeing with me based on me telling them what the facts are. It is that they're, I often refer to wokeism as like a complex reactive system in people's behavior. It's maladaptive. It is immoral. Often it includes a lot of malice. It's reactionary, and it's tribal. It puts people into tribal groups, and it erases reality. And a lot of people who are plugged into the internet, they really do soak up the propaganda that suits their tribe. Whether it's true or not, they don't care. And a lot of the times, that's the true circumstance with Zionist Israel as well, is that the society goes along with the kabuki theater. They go along with, oh, oops, I noticed a lie there, but I'm just going to go along with it because I'm sticking with my tribe. Well, we have the same complex adaptive problem in the West now of all different identity groups. It's really not going to end well. This is unacceptable, especially for civil society, the economy, and the national questions, whether or not nation states will even continue. At this moment, I think Canada, UK are no longer nation states. They're more like cosmopolitan states, or with the mass migration crisis. A lot of Europe is hard to pin down because we don't know where they're heading. Each country is sort of taking a radically reactionary direction either way. What I would say beyond the psychology is that in foreign policy, I think it comes down to how honest is it? If, I know the mainstream accepted think tanks that I have always railed against, both in the US and in Canada, foes of people, that the main ideology is imperialism, that it's not even possible for an academic. I was studying foreign policy and I wanted to work for one of these think tanks. I would not even get close to it because I have classical ideas that would just threaten the whole, mafia here. But even so, even they have been trying to ring the alarm bells. The Institute for Peace and Diplomacy, for example, published a white paper in 2022 by Christopher Mott called The Woke Imperium, the Coming Confluence Between Social Justice and Neoconservatism. It really means that neocons, what I would describe as a neocon, is you lie to justify the politics that you want. But that if you want to start a war, you create the pretext for war. For example, George Bush fabricating weapons of mass destruction in order to start a war. It's neoconservatism. It's about lying. So it's an ideology where you just lie and violate international law. Wokeism, in terms of taking over social justice and ramming through the craziest stuff I've ever seen in my life. The Biden administration, one observation I had of the Biden admin, and Trudeau went along with it in Canada too, was that compared to way back with Obama, woke neocons at least knew the words to things. Samantha Power, for example, is a genius, even if I despise her. She's one of the most evil war criminals I've ever seen in my life. But she was intelligent, and so was Obama. He was articulate, charismatic, and quite dangerous because of that. You have a tricky person who is able to figure out what things are. Fast forward to the last few administrations, Biden, Trudeau, these people don't actually know what they're talking about. They're not articulate. They're not charismatic at all. In fact, I don't think Justin Trudeau can recite the alphabet when it comes to LGBTQ, ABC plus alphabet. He doesn't even know what these words are or what it means. He gets it wrong. Like every time he's ever tried, he's gotten it wrong. And it's very easy to do a few searches and see, oh, well, he had blackface there. He doesn't care about women. It's pretty clear that none of it is real. He has no idea what he's doing. The wokeism as neoconservatism, my observation is that as the historical situation has matured, it has actually gotten severely decayed, quite degenerate. You have people working in foreign policy at the highest levels of power throughout Western governments who actually believe their own Western propaganda, creating an intelligence crisis or a strategic crisis. These are dangerous situations when you have people with decision-making power who believe tabloid propaganda that are not real and then are directing circumstances of whether people live or die based on things that aren't real, affect our own people.
Yeah, that is, you've painted it's an ironic picture, but it's very true. Neoconservatism is woke. That's literally the.
Oh God.
Yeah, well, it's kind of because all of these fake identities and this identity politics and the fake nationalism that is being projected onto. Not only do we believe our own fake nationalism, and then we project it onto other countries, expecting them to give up probably a better idea of nationalism for what we consider it. It is this woke mentality, because the woke and the postmodernists, they project, as the left hemisphere does, their values and their way of thinking onto the rest of the world. And so in that sense, I mean, neoconservatism, and because you look at the Zionist groups, and you can watch interviews with Tucker Carlson, and then look at the technocracy people that have been slowly just taking over the United States' administration. It is woke. That is what it is, and it's no different than, as you're saying, than even connecting way back when to the eugenics movements. Because even in Alberta here, we were one of the first provinces in Canada to take on some eugenics policies. So it's like, that's not out of our history. And so you advocating, looking at the history, would help us better define what these identities are, and then how to even value them, I think. And because I think overvaluing these identities has, when we don't understand them, so it's a misconstrued value, whatever it is, and then we can't put the value in the real things that seemingly tend to lift us up. Because you've talked a lot about the doom and gloom, and it is doom and gloom, so this is not a criticism. Like, you are rightfully pessimistic, but it is because of people like you that I'm also optimistic, because you are a very educated person. You have been burnt by both sides, not just attended and participated, but you've lost friends, you have lost good people that you knew, and then there's professors. There's so many places you have been and been subjugated to people projecting their values or changing based off of the changing definitions and stuff like that. So, like, this isn't just and you are speaking so concisely and rationally about these things, but you're still talking and you're still learning. So it's like, even though you're pessimistic, you are acting as if there is another day, and that shows to me, and it shows that you still value the potential. So that's one thing. Can you comment on that, and like the value that you have, which keeps you going? Because that's, to me, is the solution that we've kind of been needing to get to.
Oh geez, I don't know if I have a solution, my friends. I get so bored watching the world burn that I just find things to do, and because I had nothing else to do. Like, I have all this poli-sci background. I'm like, I can't work for the party that I used to work for. I might as well take over a bridge with a karaoke machine, infiltrate Pride. maybe I'll talk a little bit about that, actually. I mean, mm, you know, I always struggle because there's two abominations in ideology. One of them is materialism and the other one is idealism. And I think they're both just hilarious. I think Chesterton and C.S. Lewis both criticized idealism in the industrial society because once people were absorbed into modernity, the value of church, community, religion, when I say morality, or even just knowing the form and the function, different things that we would have appreciated before then, even though they fought so hard for religious freedom and they pushed the churches and even pushed into politics, which I think they regretted, is that people really just got absorbed into secular God is dead in the 1900s anyway. It doesn't even matter. Where conversely, being a materialist, I've always valued and cherished forensic precision of facts. So if you can find actual evidence, or at least understand actually existing circumstances, you could probably begin to understand the problem. Even materialists or so-called leftists, I don't know what they are today, they are the most incapable confronting evidence, actual fact that I've ever seen in my life. Even back when I was fighting for rights against evangelical Christians in the US for gay rights, evangelical Christians were, that they were kind of reasonable. You could have a conversation with them. With the woke left, you cannot have a conversation with them. It's not possible to have a reasonable, healthy, deep conversation with them.
Or any conversation. This is actually a video that you took, and this is describing exactly what you're saying. This is you trying to infiltrate Pride, so to speak, which is funny because you technically belong in the group according to the definitions today. And look, umbrellas. Talk to
they
the
attacked
hand.
us. Yeah, they assaulted two of us and harassed the rest of us. I was not assaulted, but they had hit two of my other friends with those umbrellas. What I did was that after boycotting Pride for about 15 years, I wanted to return because it's time to start speaking out. And the best way to do this is to return to Pride with the original conception, inclusion. Of course, I try to include every canceled voice that marched with me in support of my rights. And they did. Like a former professor, some of my friends who were could not continue studying on campus. I have friends also from the other university who are suffering the same situation. And even though they've been sort of forced to leave because they're being called hateful, I used to be a student leader for gay rights on campus. Like I used to run it used to be called the Diversity Center, which later became the Pride Center a million years ago. That I was handing out resources, sexual health products, and all kinds of things to students. I was trying to educate people. And that back then, it was based in civil liberty. And even if people disagreed, they could still access services free of judgment. And it was more of a service-based situation in line with civil liberty. Today, it's more of a cult. And so when I tried to include the canceled voices in Pride by signing up correctly, I signed up an alumni through the university, jumped through the hoops. We were literally attacked. They made up a bunch of stuff about how they aren't safe because, I don't know, I guess like a gay guy and his friends who support gay rights tried to march in gay pride. That's a threat. Mm-hmm. So they got security after hitting us with umbrellas and blocking us and stuff. they got security. Security was all hired by McMahon Security. I did not recognize really many security officers who were actually born in the country. They looked like they were foreign workers. Not to say that that is not work, it's still work, but it's just that they did not engage with us. They seemed quite confused. They were running around looking for as if they were looking for some shooter or some like a actual threat. It's like, no, there's a gay guy, this university professor friend who's a feminist and supports gay rights. Oh, it's just us. So they were running around the whole place trying to figure out where's the commotion coming from. And eventually the police were called, and the Pride organization was having some mental health problems. Like the Pride organizers were clearly, visibly not mentally well. They couldn't communicate. They were shaking and confused. They were not making sense. It was pathetic. And I will hold them to that. That is so disgusting. And they were not Canadian either. They were not people that I grew up fighting for my rights with. They're new. These are new people who have taken over. Whether it's the Q and the T, where's the LGB? There are no gay people at Pride anymore. It's so sad. And then we're not even allowed. We'll get the police called on us. We try. So, I haven't spoken out very much about my own personal views ever. I don't really talk about my own views. I just do journalism that is critical. I try to do fact-based journalism, but just trying to get cancel voices included created this sort of like, you're kicked out, you're banned, and we might even ban the institution itself. So then the next day I was interviewed by Rebel at campus. I called for the divestment of corporate and institutional sponsors from Pride following the trend across the country. I believe Toronto Pride lost $900,000 this year. Vancouver lost $400,000 in sponsorships. Calgary Pride lost $300,000 in sponsorships. And Ottawa Pride was blocked protesters in the streets. I believe in 2024, Toronto Pride was asked to repay over $500,000 in government grants because they failed to deliver on programs that matched the stipulation. And similarly, in Calgary, I believe the program that was postponed till next year was the Alphabet Mafia. And I was so shocked when I looked at what that was. I was horrified. I had to look up what the acronyms meant, but it was QT BIPOC Art Performance. So QT BIPOC, so queer and trans people of color. And this racist and sexist, art initiative of Canada, it all stems from federal grants targeted to promote identity politic sort of art. And the art that is produced is so unbelievably ugly that it's really just stuff to make Canadians hate themselves, to tell us that we're all racist, sexist, and horrible, that we're all just all the worst, whether it's true or not. So personally, I don't think that's a good use of money. But I also don't think that it's fair to attach my rights, my legacy of civil liberties, LGB rights, to that ugliness, because I don't consent to that. I don't want to fund messages, with the Canadian tax dollar that make Canadians hate themselves and really just create really mentally ill cults that seem to be really infused, actually. Don't want to claim that these are really focused politics. They're coming out of this the consciousness and this cultish ideology and the art that it's producing, the culture. Because I don't think that it's coherent. I really don't. Anyway, I really apologize for ranting. I just had to.
No, that kind of ties it, because calling it a cult, and you've alluded to the falling of the Roman Empire a couple times, and we're going into a dark age, you said. Well, the falling of the Roman Empire was the beginnings of a dark age, and we absolutely are in the falling of the Roman Empire, because even you saw calling this wokeism, neoconservatism, technocracy, kind of all in the same breadbasket here. They are cults, and you look at the Roman Empire, it was during its decline and the decadence of society where the cults started and the mafias started to rise in their power before everything, collapsed. And we're right there as well. So we see all these groups starting. And another thing, I was reading a book by Martin Armstrong, who's talking about not only the Alberta sovereignty, but generally just the subversion of republics. And he mentioned the fact that a big strategy would be replacing your military and your security with foreign people. That way they don't recognize the culture, they don't recognize the people. So you get rid of that communal feeling and any familiarity with the actual whatever identity exists within the community. And that way it becomes easier to overthrow them and subvert them. So even you're like, I don't recognize this is not familiar, what you're dealing with. And you actually used to be a part of it. So talking about that cult rising, and it goes back to Macy's question, which is part of the solution being the communal aspect. Because if you don't recognize your community and your community's values, it no longer becomes familiar. That's when these cult groups get to rise, and that's when these foreign entities come into power and get to subvert what was always existing. And you can only do that via groups. Like, we focus on the individual, knowing the individual leads to groups, but still recognizing, as you said, like a civil liberties community, you can recognize where that's the common ground, that you can still gain a couple friends and go, look, this is not what we were, is it? And then so you have that baseline to start rebuilding.
Yeah, like my remark to that is, like, when I'm thinking of these type of movements, it just seems like you're basically using the veneer of selflessness to be selfish. It's as simple as that. Like, you just want to do whatever the fuck you want to do, and you're to guise it. You say, oh, like, love everybody and da 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 da, and like, because that's what they did in the hippie movement. It was like peace, love, man, no war, right? But like, they remind me of the today's modern transgender movement, because like, they are some of the most inclusive, fucking negligent, fucking like people that I've ever encountered in my well, they're not inclusive. That exclusive, exactly. And that's kind of the thing that this violent. Yeah, and your Macy was asking about this group think, so to speak, and you being a part of all these groups. I think understanding, you're recognizing that is an exclusive group. You wanted to come back and rebring the inclusivity, and that, which is funny, but that's a positive.
Afraid of Babel.
It is afraid of Babel. It's totally afraid of Babel. But your mode of attention was inclusive, and that it brings it back to the basics. That way people can, because we have more in common than we do differently. And recognizing that those groups are being exclusive, and it's not the majority because of that reason. Like, your mode of attention includes more people. Like, because even the fact that we are now friends, like a couple of years ago, that would not have been the case. But because you're actually retracing to your inclusive roots as through your journey, that is literally what on face seems like polar opposites,
Yeah, like, I want you to comment on that, in the sense of like, what kind of got you to shift from your, I guess, quote unquote, radical days, right? And when you even have those moments where you felt like you were actually embracing, because it's almost like it's that stupid line that's kind of true, where it's like, like, because you can recognize when someone's being exclusive, right? It might mean that you yourself recognized it in you once. And that's why you were able to recognize it in the first place, because you're like, holy shit, like, I remember when I was going through a time like this. And my last little like remark to that is, because I definitely want even people listening, because I know that we could be classified as like right or centrist right. It's like what I would say for even the listeners listening in is that it's like, if we're not careful, that idea of not just even colonialism, but just conservatism and like the quote unquote right, we will end up just like the fucking left, because my brain goes like, hemispheres is hemispheres. That's how me and my sister look at it, right? Because we can recognize the pattern of just human beings in general and what happens, right? But you mentioned that tribalism, and it's like the minute that we start getting caught in this type of like group think, right? And it's not, that's different than community. Community is way different than fucking echo chambers and groupthink, because it sucks, because the right can do this too, where we're like, oh, we need to be inclusive, we need to hear from other people, right? And like, so they'll say, well, we want to have conversations with the left, and like, as even you tried to at Pride, it's like, I want to go and I want to have conversations with these people, right? And they have a nobbins, right? But then when we try and do that, we say that, and sometimes we don't even do it though amongst ourselves. It's so funny. Yes. Even the right can exclude the right. It's so fucking hilarious. We've seen it. We've seen it and we've lived it. It's like, hold on, you got caught up in this whole idea of like, our principles say that we believe in community and family and, you know, faith and all.
As long as it's my faith.
But when we get caught in the parties and the community, then we insert competition.
Yes.
Right? And then we kind of go like, well, I've been working so hard, right? Like, so like you can't betray me. Like, look at all of what I've been doing. It's like you guys got to back me up here, right? And it's like, but what about everybody else who's been working just as hard, or if they're just starting out and they have good ideas? And so it's like the people that even are similar in thought to you, you'll still get your competitive left hemispheric vibe going in and going like, no, they're my enemy for the time being. Like, I wish them all the best, but like, they're my enemy for the time being. It's like, no, then you don't wish them the best, because this was the whole point was free speech, ideas, and yes, of course, you're allowed to stand on something. Like, that's fine, but it's also the idea of like, I thought we stood on the overall whole of trying to promote each other, rising tides floating all ships kind of thing. But I know that was a lot, but your comments on that?
Well, I don't want to beat a dead horse. I think that we're in deep trouble as a civilization. Dark age ideology has arrived. It's here. This is it. You're describing it. No, I wrote an article. I can't remember what the exact date was. It was about Ottawa's national security meltdown. I wrote it 1 year ago in November 2024. newcoldwar.org. And I'll send it to you. But anyway,
oh, nice, babe.
I had highlighted that it was a national scandal, but it was really actually more than the national scandal. At this stage, I see Ottawa's national security meltdown that was taking place at the time, where it was very clear that politicians were weaponizing intelligence, as well as their access to intelligence and decision-making power in the spy agency and in the other apparatuses, the security establishment, for partisan purposes. So if I were to repeat that with less words, they're weaponizing access and intelligence against their political opponents rather than for the function and form of defense. So that shows that, like, literally there's a breakdown, that it doesn't really matter the identity politics, even like liberal, conservative labels. It kind of goes back to Feuerbach when he inspired Marx, Hegel. Marx just thought he was incredible, his critique of Christianity, but he said there is a subject, predicate, a critique. Oh, they both relate to one another. If people cannot tell the difference between the subject and the predicate, which is a description of a subject, for example, if we're talking about intelligence, like what if a liberal gets their hands on intelligence? Or what if a conservative gets their hands on intelligence? We might be talking about so many different things. The labels don't actually matter to me. I'm more concerned with the subject. They're not. They don't get it. Like our political class is degraded cognitively. They can't tell the difference between things. So what actually is the form and the function of all these mechanisms in our civilization for features of nation states like security, borders? I mean, these people only see the predicate. They only see the descriptions of things, but they don't actually know what is it, what was it designed for, what should it be doing. They're using it for their own purposes and lying about it. And it shows a total breakdown. I mean, when I wrote that article a year ago showing that the liberals were weaponizing intelligence to basically smear the conservatives as somehow foreign, they're foreign or total opposite in reality, actually. But, what I would actually say is that for other countries like Europe or the USA or Oceania, countries in the, Australia or New Zealand, countries in the Five Eyes, or even other countries outside of the West, if they can see how badly things are breaking down, they should realize that relying on countries like ours that are now in deep decay is actually a security threat to their country as well. Like this total breakdown, whereas intelligence was being flared into the public sphere, and it was just like name calling and hearings, closed hearings. Right? We still don't even know what was in closed hearings. Some of this stuff is so damning and stupid, unbelievably not for the purpose of the function of what it was made for. It actually puts the U.S. in danger. It's a security risk to the U.S. It's a security risk to Europe as well. We have politicians, and just that our institutions are in permanent decay and crisis and in contradiction with each other. Anything that we have access to, and even having big toys, whether that's cyber weapons or, brain power as a middle power, or military assets, intelligence assets,
AI databases,
Yeah, I don't feel safe living here as a Canadian citizen. It's horrible living here. This is putting the whole world at risk. The breakdown. I mean, I'm not talking so much, like I know we kind of went from identity politics to more subject predicate and now critique or whatever, whereas our elites are no longer able to tell what they're doing, really. And they're kind of just taking the big toys and running around like children. And it's really it's not just it's our own country that's collapsing, but it's literally it would put the whole world at risk. And same with the nuclear codes in America or any other country that has more advanced technology or complex systems.
Okay. It's making me think of, we've done a lot of talking about identity, and not just identity as in identity politics, but we've talked about the identity as a motive for doing things such as, controlling empires, invading other countries, excluding and other people because it doesn't match your idea of things. Now, this is something Macy said, which was funny. She alluded in the phone call conversation to the Morgan Freeman thing, like, what do we do about racism? And he's like, stop talking about it. So the funny thing with this whole identity thing is that if people were, and because even alluding to the radical right, you said it kind of in the beginning, wherever the left goes, the right is always behind politically anyway. It's just slower, but it gets there. It absolutely gets there. It's just slower. With that being said, that the left really clings to this identity politics. So seemingly, increasingly does the right. And the scary thing that even my dad has talked about in the household is that when the right starts to swing the other way and the pendulum starts coming, typically because they value and their identity not being gender, it's actually identities that are way more complex, such as I'm Christian, Muslim, you use the faith identity, and like faith is a beautiful thing, but when it is your identity, it can become the same weapon that the left use gender as, you use faith. And so when something terrible happens to you, these entities bring in things like they use foreign policy and they start weaponizing the left and the right and the intelligence and then AI data centers. Somebody on the right who goes out of their way to subscribe to a religion, tries to acknowledge entities and these beautiful things outside of themselves, to do the right thing as we believe people are a good thing worth investing in, they feel 30 times more indignant than somebody on the left would. And so their anger and their feeling of justification that they are rightfully angry and therefore the violence is justified because they've done this good thing, and now they've been, as Macy said, the competition, it just comes in and they've been wronged, and now they feel as if in principle they are allowed to then use the same fire and weapons that the left has been using. They are allowed to use the technocracy because we were burnt more and we have more cause. So suddenly, like Danielle Smith even bringing in digital ID now, well, it's justified. The right can use the data centers and we can do this thing, but the left cannot. So the reason why I kind of bring this up is like, either way, this identity thing and identifying with this thing is an issue. We've talked about previously, like idealism, and even like you said earlier, with idealism generally, that was a problem because then you think idealism is looking at something and seeing something that's, like you said, it's not there. It's just not existent. But that becomes your basis of identity and your reality because you think that is the way things are. And so when it comes to creating a real identity, because we can't get rid of what people are going to identify with, people have to, like you said, go to history. You got to find the reality of things. You can't do this idealism, not in faith, not in people, in the sense of like having this all massive God that is all good and powerful, that everybody is subject to. That's just never how it works because people think differently. So you have to acknowledge what you were saying when you went to that Pride parade. You acknowledge the reality that they are exclusive, whereas you were trying to be inclusive, and it wasn't going to work because they wanted to exclude your inclusivity. So in order to understand even you and remap where you are as a person that was going for civil rights liberty, you had to step back and acknowledge the reality of where we are. And so all of your articles on even the Quebec thing, Alberta likes to, we envy Quebec. That's the reality. We covet what they have. So there's a bit of this prejudice, but the reality about we're on the same playing field, you got to look at where they were. You got to look at the Roman Empire. So you got to identify the history where even all these files that you talked about that are exposing the reality, not the idealism about what it looks like to be a man or a woman. You got to look, because half the time I'm reading so many books on just what it means to be a woman and hormones. It's so complicated. Okay. I would never, nobody knows, funny enough, what it actually manifests and demonstrates to be a man or a woman, because we still don't know all the science. If you're a man of evidence, then we're trying to learn the brain, so complicated. Trying to even identify as a left or right hemisphere is freaking tough. You can see patterns, same with men and women, but you can't just create a conclusive thing. So I think if we're going to form identities, because it's going to happen regardless, you do have to look at the reality about how it actually manifests. And then maybe then your identity will be something that's more akin to what everybody can relate to. And then we can start, because identity right now is a problem. We need to make it not a problem because it's not going to go away.
No, actually, I might disagree with you and be provocative.
How dare you?
Well, okay, so here, what I am seeing is sort of like a search for a better ideology that is not going to get us all killed.
Yes.
As a civilization that's collapsed.
The way you worded that was great.
Go even further and say that maybe ideology is the problem. Because when I was young, I loved I love philosophy. I studied philosophy in school. I love political philosophy with a passion. I read, fanatically. Read. My ideology only accounts for 1% of what I do in the world or how I see the world. Ideology, I love ideology. So it's great. It's so much fun. And I could be like a fire Pokemon. You could be a water Pokemon. You could be an earth Pokemon. It's awesome. It's super fun. But it's ideology. And if it only accounts for 1% of I see the world and what I value. Why do we have a generation that has risen up where it is 110% their worldview and what they do? Are they captured by it? That's more my question, is why has ideology taken hold when it's nuts? Like, some of these ideas that are out there, absolutely, there's something wrong. It's not even possible for a reasonable person to even want to do anything that they're doing. So, that's my question. Why are people captured by ideology today where they weren't before? Some factors might be internet, rise of technological society. There's something called information fragmentation, where we are trapped in an internet algorithm based on we look at the algorithm feeds us more of what it thinks we want to see.
Plato's
cave. So we see more. Yeah, it creates Plato's cave because it's how it's designed to hook you in and continue your addiction to the platform, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. And I believe another concept, filter, or like a biased filter. And some research has suggested that a lot of the people we're talking about, for example, the woke left, that they might actually be still average IQ, that they are intelligent, they are seeing multiple sources, according to some research that was published. I'm still questioning a lot of the science behind information fragmentation. It's mostly political psychology and statistical psychology and knowledge of information systems. But basically, what is it then? If very few people are truly in the category of like totally nuts, and the rest of them are just sort of like going along with it, if it's not what we think it is, why are they doing that? Some other explanations could be that they're scared. It could be that they're, I don't know. Their moral character is poor. They're bad people. They're just dishonest people, and they like screwing around with other people. They like it. So that's explanation. But I mean, the research on bias filters, information fragmentation, and political psychology really show that the really zero IQ people is actually quite fraction. So it is actually a huge area of study since the rise of the information age. Now the smart information like AI and so forth. We don't understand why people's behavior has really declined so badly, and their thinking, their attention. So there's a lot of questions. I would say we really don't know. Ideology, for me, as somebody who is extremely, I read it daily. I read ideological stuff. It only accounts for maybe 1% of how I see the world or how I interact with the world. I would talk to anyone. So why do other people not do that?
Well, I mean, you spend most of your time, you still spend a lot of your time doing research. And like, so I was alluding to earlier, this understanding the reality, not what ought, but what is. That that almost forces your ideology, because I was using identity earlier, but we can use ideology because ideology leads to identity. Like, that's fundamentally the case. And ideology, if you are constantly gaining knowledge, you are forced to remap your ideology and take different parts, include other parts. You're constantly playing and pulling with it. So your ideology being 1%, that's, I think, as a result also of you continuously pursuing, because ideology is it's not meant to be a static thing. I don't believe anybody can get rid of your ideology, because me and Macy know the hemispheres, and you're not going to get rid of a left hemisphere which needs certainty. So you said, like, you used fragmentation, you used fear, confusion, stuff. All of that is in the realm of the left hemisphere, and it needs an ideology to function. So that's not necessarily a problem. Where it becomes a problem is if it stays the same. Yours doesn't, because you've literally gone from the left to the right to the middle to the... You've literally done everything. You're an embodiment of why ideology doesn't take hold for you the same percentage as everybody else, is because you're still gaining and changing. It's a process for you that you're still living, whereas for a lot of other people, their ideology has become static. It is, God said it, that settles it, that's all I need to know. And because that's
the trans Scott.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like
be a god.
Yes.
My thoughts on that is that, like, as you were talking, I was like, you're not going to escape ideology. No. In the sense where it's like, you can be ideological about not being ideological. Like, that could be your ideology.
Exactly.
Or you could be ideological about making sure that you keep a open ideology, which is still in a form of ideology. Like, it's what me and Maddie were talking about before, where it's like everybody has a model, right? And some models may encompass others a bit more better than others, right? So if you have one where it's like, I'd like to keep my model one where I act as an open person, well, then chances are you might be able to encompass more models, right? Perhaps. But then when you're talking about it, it was just reminding me of, because we're reading chapter 12 in preparation for our book study, and Gilchrist, when he was talking about, I guess, kind of like schizophrenia and the left hemisphere and kind of what we've been seeing in the society at large and what's been just happening and playing out, because the question of, like, what is different, because what you were talking about with IQ, I'm like, man, people could just freaking, like, tamper with the metric of what actual intelligence means, and then they say, how many people are intelligent? It's like, you fucked up, you tamper with the measurement, I know that's not intelligence, and then you say, oh, look, we have, like, so many people that are so smart, and there's, like, only a few that dumb, and it's like, no, you fucked up with the fucking, you twisted the volume, you fucks. But anyways, could be, and because they themselves are fucking morons. So it's like, well, then they think, oh, well, this is a sign of intelligence. It's like having a bunch of, like, freaking, this is gonna be so offensive to somebody. I was gonna say, it's like having basically a bunch of just, like, low IQ'd individuals trying to figure out what high IQ means. It's so funny. It's like you've never even experienced it to know what it is. It's so funny. But what I was thinking of Gilchrist, he was talking about the concept, though, of just being too self-aware, and what he called it was there's a loss of pre-reflexive, in the sense of, like, the version of yourself has now become that which you experience of yourself. Right. So it's like, now you're acting in the world and you're, like, constantly fucking analyzing that shit, and then that's what you determined is yourself, right? But not actually realizing, but how you engage in the moment when you're presencing with another person, and, like, what it is that you want to demonstrate yourself as, that right there is kind of like your concept of the self. The afterwards of what it is that you feel like you analyzed, whether wrongly or rightly, so far it just seems wrongly, right? it's not actually that's not you. Because it's like that stupid line, but it's true, where it's like your actions speak louder than words. Like your actions determine kind of like who you are, right? And people are not paying attention to their actions, clearly.
No, that's one of my favorite. It was one of the first like long form discussions that you, me, Macy, and then another friend of ours got to have together while we were attending that Matthew event when he was in Calgary. And it was funny because he said, and he kind of classifies himself as a conservative and then maybe a religious conservative, but on paper, you being this former communist, liberal, gay, all of those labels, like on paper, you are everything that I am against. But he didn't realize any of that crap till over 3/4 of the conversation, because the way you demonstrate yourself is not those labels, any of them. And that's also one of the reasons me and Macy really, really get along with you, is because, again, your ideology, those labels, and they are synonymous. Ideology and labels are absolutely synonymous, so people should really think twice when they start using those labels. They're a reflection of your ideology. Because those came way later, they're only 1% of your actual lived demonstration. You are somebody that still, me and Macy can tolerate and hang out with. We don't, our family, sometimes we lose some friends because it's hard to maintain with people that don't see bigger pictures, but you're really easy to get along with. And that was one of the funniest conversations because it's so true.
It's interesting. Derrida wrote a book. He was a Neoplatonist French philosopher.
Yep.
I believe it was called The Politics of Friendship. Really, it's a philosophical critique of human relationships and friendship. He often used to say, oh my friend, French. I'm not sure how to pronounce that in French, speak French, but he often used to say, well, you read between the lines, it usually means there is no friend. Or it means, people watch out for sneaky fuckers, because like if you're everyone's friend, you're nobody's. I actually do have a lot of friends. I would say some of my old left friends on the left passed away. The new generation are not capable of even having a conversation anymore. Even with themselves, when they agree with themselves, they are not, meeting the prerequisites of friendship or conversation or the axioms of cooperation. So we're thinking of game theory and prisoner's dilemma. Benefits both just try to work together, even if it's not. You got to try. It's a prison or whatever. It won't. And I am a pretty forceful person. I always try to stand with the poor, protect the weak, heal the sick. Those are very Christian concepts. I think Christianity was always the original socialism. Today, I don't blame people for being on the Christian right. I think that's actually way more closer to Marxism today than the crazy people running around with blue hair, aborting themselves and popping Tide Pods and drinking dish detergent and voting for collapsing the international trade situation, or 2 genocidal proxy wars, ruining our civil society, like just nuts. Right? Absolutely. That makes sense. So I think that, there's a lack of willingness for people to even connect reality ideas. Honestly, I would not give decision-making power for crazy people to try. That sounds horrible. It sounds kind of like I'm being a little bit of a dictator here, but if you're testing, like, the population can't handle it. They clearly have no idea how to do even basic conversations anymore. I would not give them the right to try. I'd actually say, but besides my, some of my activism here or there, or even on, the necessities that are going to arise in the next 5 years to 10 years to 15 years as our country fragments. But we're going to need to work with people. All kinds and necessities will arise beyond the limits of which cartel that we vote for. Mm-hmm. So it's actually unavoidable, but I would probably avoid ideology. That's just my assessment. Is like, if their proven track record is like complete failure, I just would not talk.
We are almost at 2 hours. Can you believe it?
I'm not gonna lie. This is the longest freaking interview that we've actually done. Like, wow, I was surprised. Like, Maddie, she kept going and she kept asking questions. I was like, oh man, like, we actually want to keep writing this. Okay. I'm like, because usually we are like, oh, we should like cut it off because of the time, because attention spans are really peaking short. But I was actually kind of glad to see her kind of go like, nah, we're just gonna say fuck you and pay attention.
This episode is PG, if anybody hasn't noticed already. Macy.
No, you guys.
No, that's fine.
Sorry.
No, this has been it's been a good conversation, like, because even in again, this whole conversation has been proving, and reality, what is reality? You do research and you've done these articles in pursuit of the reality. And when you are constantly trying to find the reality, also known as the truth, ideology, idealism, the limits of labels, they inherently decline. It's not even a conscious effort. And that's another thing that Gilchrist has talked about, is that
materialism is an ideology as well.
Yep.
I mean, I've met communists and Marxists who are fanatical about it, and yet they're going along with the wokeism political religion. They call it a cult. They don't have critical thinking and can't figure out anything. And yet it's secular. And that's what baffles me, is these two abominations of ideology, materialism and idealism. The population takes it 110% serious, is like insane, and they can't just chill out and kind of just practice some common sense. It's really scary. So, it is ideology. I'd say.
Yeah. It's funny you say materialism, because I'd never connected the two. Like, you're very good with your labels because you've studied, and more meticulously than I have, the movements. So it's like you can identify the actual time frame.
Atheism can become a religion.
Oh, no,
it absolutely can.
Absolute scientific materialism, idealism, like you said,
anyism.
Anyism. Well, I think that's the moral of this conversation, is that because the left hemisphere is the nature of the left hemisphere, left, right, and in the end, they're the same. The only which goes for socialism or communism, capitalism. When you get far enough, they're the same. The only difference is how to get there and how long. Like time, that's really the only difference, is time. Because otherwise, all of these extremes, the neocons, the wokes, the lefts, the rights, the whatever, this ism versus that ism, they're all the same, because the left hemisphere doesn't know anything else. It really can't do anything different other than what it knows, which is why people need to learn their brain. You want to get reality? Look at what your brain does without you knowing. That is like one of the biggest realities people neglect. And if people neglect it, a lot of these ideologies and labels, regardless, they creep up under you and you don't see them coming because you're not meant to see them coming.
I'm not going to disagree, because there's not enough time to start a whole new. But I might posit like something crazy. It's going to sound so nuts. Sometimes just chilling out is actually part of just being a good person. Because if it's causing harm, people are like clearly telling you you're like, it's killing people. It's causing harm. I think that it depends on the moral development of the individual as well. Sometimes it's very clear. It goes in one ear. They're like, oh, I'm causing harm. And then they just do it 10 times harder because they like it. They want to cause harm because it's tribes. They're in tribes. And there's revenge spirals going out of control. They don't even care anymore if it's true or not. That's dangerous. It's not acceptable.
It's the Hatfield and McCoys. I don't know if anybody knows that legend, but there's it's not a legend, it's true. But there's also, me and Macy, our whole clan watched the movie on it. That's society. That is, left hemisphere and ideology and not being a good person, not knowing history. It's like, this person did that thing, even if they didn't, because they're a Hatfield or they're a McCoy, it don't matter no more.
It's Shakespeare as well. Shakespeare's first major play is Titus Andronicus. It's all about the fall of Rome. As Rome was decaying, the elites were carrying out revenge spirals. It was spiritually spent. When you're pagan and you're just like, I'm going to invoke this god or that god to get at my enemy who just basically did this little petty thing at me, and I'm just going to, and eventually all the gods are just like tired of it because it's spiritually spent. Mm-hmm. It's all fake, and it's all destroying the original intent of a republic, a well-ordered republic. So that's where we're at. We're needing to go back to Shakespeare.
Aw, that is so wholesome.
That is so cute.
That is a perfect way.
That's a good way to end it. We need to go back to Shakespeare. I love that.
Okay, that should be the title. Will, you're editing this?
We should go back to Shakespeare. If we say it enough times, the theme is AI. If you're picking this up, the theme is we should go back to Shakespeare.
Oh my God. I can live with that.
We will have you on again, Morgan, because
I was gonna say there's a lot though.
And you are a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah,
and I know you.
Anytime, yeah.
Perfect. That is fantastic.
Sweet. Well, I hope you guys have such a sweet night, and enjoy the last days of summer as we move into fall. I think we need to recharge a little bit from how crazy it's been, but good to see you guys. Take care.
Aw, thank you. Thank you as well.
Love you, bro.
Okay, Maddie, so we have to do our thing. Ready?
Yeah.
Okay, wait. Morgan, do you want to do it with us?
Yeah.
You know it. I know you know it.
Yes, you do.
You have to say it. Do you know it?
Hey, on the count of 3, you know what we're going to do.
You know what we're going to do, right?
Yes, you do.
No,
This has been Holmes². That's what we're going to do. Ready?
Okay.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. This has been Holmes². Nice.